Welcome to our podcast on homelessness in Placer County. I'm Bonnie Gore, and I serve on the Placer County Board of Supervisors. I represent District 1, which is primarily the city of Roseville and the unincorporated areas of West Placer County. Placer County has about 417,000 residents, and of those, we have about 700 residents who are homeless. Placer County has the lowest rate of homelessness in Northern California, and our goal is to drive that rate even lower. My goal is to inform and educate the community about the good things we're doing to address this issue, and also discuss the challenges we face.
The homeless crisis in America is out of control, and nowhere is this crisis more apparent than in California.
Even in smaller suburban cities like Roseville, the number of people living outdoors is on the rise.
If we were to act now and strategically, I think we could make Roseville the model or stop it before it gets there.
My conversation today is with Aaron Johnson. Aaron is the probation manager of the probation outreach team in Placer County. He has been with Placer County Probation for more than 18 years. He has worked in a variety of positions and units, including the adult field unit, the juvenile detention facility, Tahoe Juvenile Field, juvenile placement, and alternative sentencing pretrial. And now my conversation with Aaron Johnson. Aaron, can you tell us about your team, what you do, how probation works with the homeless community?
Absolutely. So probation, back in about May of this year, we created a new division by realigning some of our resources that we had. And that division is called the Outreach Division. And essentially what we've got is we have a team of 7 officers that supervise approximately 200 probationers that are homeless in our communities. That's anywhere from Tahoe all the way through here in South County, so Roseville, Rockland, and Lincoln. Our team is out in the field, usually 4 to 5 days a week, kind of the boots on the ground approach. And we are working to get those people out of the situation they're in, whether we can get them back to resources such as shelter, such as residential treatment for mental health or for substance abuse, or any other needs they might have.
So your goal is to really address not only their probation needs, but also help them get more stable so that they don't offend again.
Absolutely. We believe that those two concepts go hand in hand, that living on the street is not optimal to abiding by the laws and terms and conditions of the court. So really what we need is that stabilization to get people where they need to be successful and get off their probation. Additionally, my team will also reach out to those that have no status with the court system, because we believe in our mission that we are trying to keep people from being system involved anyways.
Great. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the legal landscape, the federal landscape with Martin versus Boise, and some state challenges, the state challenges. How has the legal landscape affected your organization to do its work with the homeless?
Well, essentially what we saw prior to Martin v. Boise is most jurisdictions throughout the state of California, if not the United States, had the ability to use enforcement to move the homeless along. The reality is under Martin v. Boise, you cannot use enforcement to move folks along unless you have shelter space for them to go to. In Placer County, we have roughly 750 homeless overall. We do not have 750 beds. So enforcement is not going to be the key to resolving the issue. What's going to work is going to be outreach, support, maybe some compassion, all the while still holding people accountable and making sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do by the law. But right now with Martin v. Boise, as well as Johnson versus Grants Pass, there's a lot of things that we're still trying to explore. But what we know is that for 7 to 10 years, we've tried one way, and that way really wasn't showing a lot of productivity. And now the law is saying we can't use those strategies any longer.
Up in North Auburn, we have shelter beds, the mobile temporary shelter, a congregate shelter. My understanding is, though, because there are more beds up there, our law enforcement has been able to do some enforcement of no camping. Is that correct?
So essentially what would happen is on the North Auburn campus, if there are beds available and someone is illegally camping on government land, we have the right to either enforce that they move along, or we can take them into custody, or they can select to take a bed.
And in South Placer, we don't have many shelter beds. We have the Gathering Inn nomadic shelter,
Correct.
but we don't have enough shelter beds for enforcement in South Placer.
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful. Let's talk about the mobile probation vehicle that your team operates in South Placer. What are the services that you provide, and then how do you utilize those services for the homeless population?
So we've had that the mobile outreach vehicle up and running for a little over 2 years. We've had over 5,000 points of contact at that vehicle. Predominantly, those points of contact are going to be our homeless individuals that are on probation. What we find works best is we go into the field with a probation officer, a clinician or practitioner from Health and Human Services, and then we will either bring on partner agencies, Rockland PD, Roseville PD, things of that nature. We might have a chaplain come aboard. We might have a nonprofit come aboard, such as the Gathering Inn. And we offer not only just our case planning services that we're already doing with the client that's on probation, but we're working on what referrals to resources can we make, what achievements can we get in that moment, in that time. The real advantage we have is, number one, that vehicle meets them where they're at. Transportation is incredibly difficult. Gas is incredibly expensive. It's not easy to expect someone that's living in a watershed to make it 7 or 10 miles for an office appointment and be timely. So we bring the vehicle to them. That office gives us a safe space. It gives us temperature control. It gives us privacy, and it allows us to really work those case plans and get people where they need to be.
Give us an example of a homeless person who comes to the outreach vehicle. What are some of the services you provide them? What might be a typical day look like if you were addressing the needs of someone?
We can work on getting their Medi-Cal activated so that they can actually go get health care. We can work on getting an assessment through our partners through HHS so they can get their mental health screening or their substance abuse screening. Those clinics are offered throughout the county on particular days at particular times, but again, transportation tends to be an issue. So for someone to come on board and know that the judge has already asked them to find out if they have a substance abuse issue, and to get that resolved in one meeting on a mobile unit is huge, because then we can already start reaching out to treatment providers and scheduling those appointments to either do outpatient or inpatient treatment.
Great. Let's talk about the myths of homelessness. You've worked with the homeless community for a number of years. And what are some of the myths that you hear from the public at large?
I think there's a few myths that I've been thinking about. One myth is that people choose to live this lifestyle. Nobody of sound mind and sound judgment is going to choose to live on the street, not knowing where their next meal is going to come from, not knowing if they're going to be warm enough, not knowing if they're going to be safe enough. That's just not reality. You can't walk down a street and see a homeless individual and just go, well, you chose to be that way. I think we have more compassion. We should have more compassion. The reality is we've got to get people from that place back to what their level of success might be. Not everybody's going to have a 5-bedroom house and a white picket fence, but for them, it may be stabilization in a studio apartment. It might be the ability to go to a trailer park. It might be something like that. So that's one myth, is that people are choosing this lifestyle. The other myth I would say is anybody in our community, anybody in the state that thinks enforcement is the answer is sorely mistaken, because enforcement is not going to get us the resolution that we want. Number one, we've tried enforcement for nearly a decade in this county, and our numbers have not fluctuated much. Number two, Martin v. Boise comes along and says you can't enforce. So really what we need to look at is a more holistic approach where we bring all of our partners together. And I mean everybody. It's got to be the churches, it's got to be the community, it's got to be the government, and we need to work an approach together. And whether we're together or we have separation but a similar goal, we can get to where we need to be.
And to that point, it's not a one-size-fits-all. So a service to benefit one homeless person might look very different than what you're going to provide for another homeless person, right? Depending on their needs.
Oh, absolutely, because everybody's at a different point in their journey. So there might be somebody that today is absolutely done with being on the street and wants to go into residential treatment. There might be somebody else that today it's the first time they actually just want to talk to us. So I think a lot of what we're trying to do is we're trying to get those contact points. And we talked offline, obviously 15, 20 contact points sometimes before someone's comfortable enough to say, yeah, I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to tell you how I got here. And that's what we're out doing, boots on the ground. And my staff, the officers that I work with are so committed. They will go out on the hottest day of the year. They will go out on the coldest day of the year, because that's the day you're going to get the change. You don't go out when it's 75 degrees and beautiful weather. I mean, we still do, but that's not usually the day that someone's ready to give up.
So when it's really hot or it's really cold and they're tired of being on the streets and a member of your team reaches out to them, they're sleeping in the creek bed, and they say, yeah, maybe it's time to get help. You have
Absolutely.
folks there who say, yep, we'll help you get what you need.
And my team will go out when we have fears of flooding in local creeks. We'll make sure that people are getting to higher ground. We'll make sure that people are safe, trying to connect them back to family, get them, maybe they can sleep in the garage for a night, something like that, trying to get those natural connections going again.
Tell me about those interactions and how you build trust so that somebody will say, yes, Aaron, I am ready to get off the streets.
I think a lot of it is you've got to have the right staff that have that right personality to just drum up conversation. And you're right, the touch points are imperative. Most people meeting someone for the first time ever in life are not going to spill their life story. So we start small. It just starts with good morning, how you doing today? Or what's your dog's name? Or how you doing with your sleep? Or do you have enough supplies? Little small conversations. And then you come back the next day and the next day. And you can't go into a homeless community, into an encampment or even a single camp and think you're going to get everything in one touch. You also can't just come every 30 or 45 days and think that person's going to start to open up to you. You have to make yourself available. You have to start with the small talk, and then you have to build that relationship. And maybe it's the fact that we'll greet their pet and pet their pet. Big thing is shaking someone's hand. It's so important in the homeless community. It's not a fist bump. It's not a hi, how you doing? It's a handshake, and it's eye contact, and it's building that rapport. And once they realize that my team's mission is to help them out of the situation they're in, that we're really there to support them in whatever way we can. Obviously, we still hold people accountable. There's still people that go to jail when they have to. But what we're trying to do is build that rapport so that when they're having that tough time, they reach out to us. When they're ready for that change or that service, they know who to call, or they know that they can drum up that conversation as well.
That's great. It really comes back to treating people with respect. Everyone needs respect, and they need people to see them as a person versus a homeless person, right?
Absolutely.
They want to be seen as a person. They have challenges, and your team goes out there and really treats people as regular human beings who are really in challenging situations.
Absolutely. Dignity and respect is of the utmost priority, and the reality is these are citizens of our community.
Aaron, we have a lot of folks who are homeless who are on probation, but not everyone who is homeless is on probation. Tell us about the makeup of the homeless. How many are on probation?
Okay, we have approximately 200 folks that are on probation within the county that we would consider are transient or in a homeless status. That number obviously fluctuates quite a bit, depends on whether or not someone's in treatment, somebody gets stabilized, gets back into a residence with their family. What we try to do is, again, work with all homeless. So we have roughly 750 or so in Placer County that are homeless. Again, 150 to 200 are going to be on probation. But we want to keep folks from being system involved. We've done some internal numbers where we see you are exponentially more likely to end up system involved if you're homeless, because you're at a point where it's going to be more difficult to not have some crimes that you commit, whether it's petty theft, illegal camping, things of that nature that can lead to system involvement. So we work with everybody. It's part of the probation mission. And our focus, number one, is obviously those that are on probation, making sure they're held accountable and get the services they need. But we work with everyone in the community.
And that makes a lot of sense, right? So if somebody's homeless, you don't want them to go steal for food and money. And if you get them off the streets, get them stable, less likely to commit a crime.
Absolutely, and that's the goal.
Aaron, let's talk about shelters. We have shelters in North Auburn, and there's a concern that people have that if we build a shelter, homeless will flock there. Tell me about your experience with the homeless and the building of the new mobile temporary shelter, and are people showing up from all over the place to stay there?
So from my experience and my team's experience, what we find is that the vast majority of homeless want to stay in the community that they were born and raised or that they've lived in for some extended period of time. So we are not seeing individuals coming from Lincoln and Roseville and Rockland trying to get up to the MTS in Auburn. We're not seeing individuals coming from San Francisco and Sacramento trying to get into that shelter. There's a multitude of reasons. One is people are going to remain homeless in an area that they're comfortable with. They know the transit system, they know where they can get food, they know where they have support, things of that nature. The other is people are also not going to beat down our door to go live at a facility that has rules. Usually we have to use some other encouragement to get people into a facility that has rules because they're coming from a place where they don't have to abide by a lot of things. And all of a sudden, for example, the MTS, you have curfews, you have meal times, you have restrictions on how many items you can have in your tent. Things like that tend to keep people from moving around trying to seek shelter at that location. So we're not seeing if you build it, they will come. What we're seeing is those that are ready to change their life, that are already in that local community, are the ones that we're serving.
As we move forward trying to address the issue of homelessness here in Placer County, what do you see some of the challenges to be?
I think some of the challenges is just getting everyone on the same page to understand what the problem is, having those honest conversations without having anger in them. I've done a lot of presentations throughout the county, and I can tell you that I've been very pleasantly surprised at how many people genuinely want to see something done in a positive way. I've heard otherwise, but that's been one of the myths too, is that there's a lot of angry people. I haven't seen a lot of angry people. I see people that just want to see results.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Aaron, and thank you for you and your team being the unsung heroes. Not a lot of folks say, hey, sign me up. I want to go work with the homeless and try to help them get out of where they're at and get services that they need. So I really appreciate the work you and your team are doing day in and day out.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation about homelessness in Placer County. If you haven't had the chance yet, please listen to our other episodes at placer.ca.gov/podcasts. While you are there, you can check out the other Placer County podcasts, One Pill Can Kill, about the dangers of fentanyl, and The Placer Life, which shares interesting stories of the amazing people and places in beautiful Placer County. If you want to know more about the work of homelessness in Placer County, please go to placer.ca.gov/Bonnie Gore.